Don Huffines, who is running for GOP nomination for comptroller of public accounts. Let's go ahead and bring him in to join us this afternoon. Senator, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, it's so nice to have you here on East Texas now to get to know you a little bit and why you're running. So let's start with that. Why are you running, Senator?
Well, I think Texans deserve to know if our money, the state spending, which is over 500 million a day, is being spent properly. Is it being spent effectively? Is there any fraud involved in all the spending that we're doing? And that's what I'm interested in. I'm the taxpayer champion. I know, and I'm also a successful businessman, and I know that a dollar we don't spend is a dollar we've earned. And I'm going to work with the legislature to, of course, make sure we apply that to property tax relief. I'm really running because of my love for Texas, I'm the only uh, elected office holder when I was in the Senate that never took any money from the state, no pay, no pension, health care per diem, no nothing. And I'm going to do that as comptroller. So it's not like I'm looking for a new job and make a lot of money out of this deal.
Well, Senator, let's talk a little bit about your background. You're from Dallas. What makes, the Metroplex special to you?
Well, I was born in Dallas and grew up in the Metroplex. And so I didn't have a lot of choice in where I was born. And I love the Metroplex. So I love Dallas, DFW. It's a dynamic area. It's a lot of opportunities here. And so I've stayed here. I graduated with a finance degree from the University of Texas in Austin. I came back here to make my living. I got my broker's license, real estate license when I was in college, and I started my business right after college, and I've never looked back. I just love commercial real estate. I've been very successful at it. I'm one of the largest developers in the Metroplex. I've done projects outside of that. But I've also in other businesses, and all of that really leans back to the Metroplex. So it's oil and gas, home building, construction, venture capital. So I have deep roots here, fifth generation Texan, as I mentioned, and my family, my grandfather and my father were in the car business. I'm not in that business, and that business is over 100 years old, and my older brother runs that business. So that's not me, that's him. But still, we have deep roots in the Metroplex, and we've got a great reputation here. And my grandfather always said that it takes a lifetime to make a good reputation and 5 minutes to ruin.
Well, let's talk about your career in real estate. As you did touch on just right there, tell us the story of how your real estate company came to be. What have you learned from running your own business, as you kind of talked about a little bit? And in your view, has your business experience prepared you for the state's top financial job?
Oh, thank you. There's a few ways, a lot actually. Uh, Motto of my business is seeing beyond the obvious. And I've been very successful with that. And I take it to the political and the government role. So it's important that we have creativity and also perseverance. And I have a lot of that. You know, the foundation for leadership is initiative. You must have initiative to be a good leader. And the foundation for all virtues is courage. And those are things I live by in my business and in my life. Actually, the foundation for my life is Jesus, family, and business in that order. But back to to the business, I've got a lot of experience, and I think we need someone that with great experience in business, wide and deep, to run the comptroller's position. It's the ninth largest economy in the world. And another significant thing is a sense of urgency. And in business, we solve problems and we monetize those solutions, but we do it with speed and urgency and move. And that's what Trump's doing in DC, and I just love it. I like he's in the same business. And when you're in real estate, you evaluate risk on a regular basis. Every development I do, every project I build, I'm evaluating risk, making that decision and moving on. And I'm used to risk. and I'm used to evaluating it. And most people in government are not.
All right, well, Senator, let's move on here to talk a little bit about how you began your political career. It started in 2014, running for and being elected to the Texas State Senate, where you served one term. What inspired you to seek elected office, and what accomplishments are you most proud of achieving during your time in the State Senate?
Thank you for the question. Well, it wasn't just the first political experience I had running for office. I've been a delegate to many years before that to a lot of state conventions, I don't know, 12 or 13, a lot over a couple of decades or more. And I went to the last 5 national conventions. I'd actually been to 2 or 3 national conventions before I decided to run. And the reason I decided to run, the significant catalyst of that is our party platform. As Republicans, we have a clear definition of who we are as Texas Republicans, how we define it, our legislative priorities. And year after year, our Republicans would go to the state convention and we'd pass these priorities, and our legislators would not necessarily pay attention to those. So I decided to run. And I did, and I was the first Republican to ever knock out an incumbent Republican for a Senate seat without a runoff. And anyway, so in Austin, I learned that business doesn't operate like politics. It's just different. They're not totally interested in solving problems, and it's just different. But there was a lot of things I got done in Austin I was very, very proud of and excited. And I'll mention that again, that I'm the only elected officer in the history of the state of Texas that never took any money from the government, no pay, pension, health care, per diem, nothing. And I'm going to do the same as comptroller. And also, a lot of people, Republicans, will run and say they're conservative. They all say that. But I've got the receipts to prove it. I was always ranked one of the top 2 most conservative state senators when I was there. And then I uncovered a large government corruption scandal, which certainly I want to talk about that in a minute. I don't know if we only talk about it now or later, about my campaigns to Doge Texas and why it's so important. But I can talk about that later or now.
We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. I promise we're going to get there.
Okay. All right, great. I'll save it.
I figured it'd be a top topic for us to talk about. Let's
It
move
should
on
be.
though. Until we get there, I promise I'll let your comments be heard here in just a few minutes. But let's talk about how this isn't your first run for office since leaving the Texas Senate. You ran for governor in 2022, challenging incumbent Governor Greg Abbott. Why did you run against him then, and why aren't you challenging him this year? What lessons did you learn from your first campaign from state office?
Sure. Well, I learned Texas is really big, and running statewide is real different than running in the Texas Senate district. Even though they're big and represent almost 1 million Texans, Texas is large. It takes a lot of money. But I ran because I really felt like Republicans were tired of business as usual, and it was right after COVID, and what happened in COVID was inexcusable, I think, and I thought it was obvious that we were not being told the truth and things like that. But that's all water under the bridge. It really is. I'm looking forward to working with the governor, and I think we can work great together, and I can work great with the state legislature. I know a lot of the members down there, of course, and a lot of them have endorsed my campaign, and we're just going to work good. I worked hard when I was in the Senate to get a relationship going between the House and the Senate caucuses. I worked hard to get everybody on the same page, and I think our party platform pretty well defines what we want. We need to be on the same page because it's put together by obviously thousands of delegates at the state convention.
Well, let's get right into some of the issues listed on your website. You say government should be run like a business. What would that look like in practice, and what's your plan for tax cuts?
Well, on the business front, how the government should be run, we should always remember who our customer is, who funds government, and it's the taxpayer. It's the taxpayer. Simple as that. That's our customer. And we need to be as cordial and as friendly as possible. We need to, the comptroller is responsible for collecting all the money the state has. The comptroller is responsible for setting the budget for the legislature, telling them what they can spend. The comptroller is responsible for a lot of things, and specifically the thing I'm most excited about, not only managing the money, but also the spending side. I have eyes on all the spending. And so we need to really focus. That's what I'm really focused on. I have 600 auditors. There are there. I'm going to turn a lot of those auditors loose to auditing government because, like I said, I know that a dollar we don't spend is a dollar we earned, and hopefully we can apply that to property tax relief.
Well, now we're going to get over to the topic that you wanted to talk about just a few questions ago. Your website lists several proposals for increasing government efficiency. You want to establish a state-level DOGE. Will this be modeled after the federal DOGE? What's your take on the job the National Commission has done, and how will your office carry out these audits?
Well, there's a lot of ways. We can do third-party forensic audits. We can use the state auditor to use his resource, that agency's resources to do audits. And I'll be staffing up to do audits. Like I just said, we have 600 auditors in-house, and we'll be using a lot of that talent. I also have my own attorneys in-house, and we'll be looking for fraud across the spectrum of state government. And let me tell you how important that is. And as I want to tell you this quick story because it's another motivator for me and why I want to run Texas and why it separates me from my competition. When I was a senator, I looked at my property tax bill, and there was at the very bottom, there was an obscure government agency that had a countywide tax, it had a countywide elected board, and they were spending way over $100 million a year. 2,500 employees. Anyway, I started digging into them. They couldn't answer my questions. They couldn't answer my audit questions. I got the Rangers involved, Texas Rangers, and we turned the files over to the FBI. And 6 people pleaded guilty in that organization for stealing millions of dollars from Dallas County taxpayers. Millions, not thousands. And there was no committee formed. There was no study group formed. Nobody told me to do it. I did it 100% on my own. And it was very difficult. And I closed them down. I got a piece of legislation done to close them down. And that was really difficult too. And they don't exist anymore. That's the largest takedown of a government agency in modern Texas history, maybe forever, as far as I know. And no one running for this position has ever closed, or any position in the state of Texas has ever closed a government agency and put 6 people in prison. And I tell you that because I was doging before anyone knew the word. And what that group spent in a year, the state of Texas spends in 10 hours. I think it's time we find out if our money is being spent correctly, effectively, and not being stolen.
Well, now let's bring up modernizing the comptroller's office. Where do modernizations need to be made?
Well, certainly in the payroll systems, they all need to talk to each other. Our accounting software needs to talk to every agency at the same time. Everyone needs to be operating on the same software, of course. And we probably, Mike's, what I hear right now, we need to update all the hardware in every office, in the systems. Everybody's getting behind. And so that's the main ways. We need everybody talking to each other on the same software, same hardware.
All right, now moving on here to talk more about your promise to expose government corruption. Where do you see corruption in the state, and what's your plan for exposing corruption and its perpetrators?
Well, we got to look first and foremost where we're spending the most money. And that's Health and Human Services and education. The state of Texas spends the most in that. Health and Human Services, I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Medicaid, Medicare fraud, food stamps, for instance. We've seen the programs that they're uncovering now in Minnesota, where they're uncovering daycare systems, government. There's all these government grants, government programs, federal programs that the state funds through the general revenue. our general revenue fund. And the state really has an obligation to check that out also. Even though it's our federal funds, it's still our income tax dollars, and we need to really be investigating that. Second, I would look at education to make sure where that's being done right. Of course, my own agency I'll be looking at first and foremost and making sure that our money's being spent correctly. And I'll be looking at every government agency to that effect. Because look, if anyone's using Texas taxpayer money, any government, I should say, I mean, I think I've got a fiduciary responsibility to check it out, make sure that nobody's stealing it. And if I don't, I really put the question out there, who is? Who's going to do that? And when I've been around the state, you need to understand that I go around the state all the time. I'm working really hard, talking to a lot of voters and so many different counties and cities. I mean, all the time. A lot of the time where I go, people are handing me a file, a folder, an envelope. Sometimes they're 2 inches thick of corruption in their local governments, corruption in their county, their school district, their appraisal districts, their hospital districts, their HOAs, all these different areas where we have government money. And they feel they're unheard. They feel like they're not getting the resources necessary to uncover this, to put people in jail. And Texans are tired of that. We don't need that. This is Texas. This is the Republican Party. We are the party of ethics, of morals, of responsibility. And I'm going to prove that. We're going to make sure that everyone takes pride if they're going to have touched our money, if they're working for the government for any area. We need to make sure they're doing it correctly and not wasting our money, because the money belongs to the taxpayer. It belongs to us. It belongs to you. It belongs to me. It doesn't belong to the government. The government didn't create the money. This is our money. We have a right to understand if it's being spent correctly.
You also include plans on your website to make gold and silver tender. Explain this plan to some of our viewers because they might not understand. How will this benefit Texas consumers?
Well, it gives them a choice. That's how it benefits Texas consumers. It gives them a choice if they want to use their bullion, or gold and silver, platinum or palladium, and we can deposit that in the Texas depository. And then you get like a card, a credit card. It's like a debit card to whatever the value is of that. You can spend that debit card, that money, the equivalent US dollars to the value of the gold and silver. And look, this is not this gold and silver exchange. It's transactional gold and silver. It's perfectly legal. The bill was passed, and it's not that the comptroller shall start the program. It's the comptroller may, and I'm a champion for the gold and silver exchange, and I'm excited to be part of it. And we'll have a robust system when I get there.
Well, speaking of systems, let's move on to talk a little bit more about the school system. You call for the elimination of woke DEI programs in government. What programs are you referring to?
Whatever the state legislature has spoken on this issue, or the governor has spoken on this issue, I will help them enforce it. If there's DEI being taught in the universities or schools or state agencies, then it needs to stop. And I'll help root that out with the power of the purse.
Well, you want to stop what you call transgender indoctrination in our schools. What role does the comptroller play in this? And can you name of an example where this indoctrination exists?
Well, the comptroller can play a role in that. Obviously, again, is the power of the purse. And just give you an example, a few years ago, there was a website promoting the Department of Family and Protective Services had it up promoting transgenderism. And it had a 24-hour hotline, and it had all this stuff with it, and telling the kids what that you can be multi-gender and all that. And I got that pulled down. in a couple of days. So it's not something we need. It's not something that the state should be promoting or dealing with, and I'm going to do what I can to stop it.
Well, you also mention on your site, I know we did a lot of research. There's a lot on your website that you
Yeah, there it is. There is.
that you exposed a state-run, taxpayer-funded transgender youth website and forced its closure. This was back when you were running for governor in 2022. That page that you were referring to was from the Texas Youth Connections website, as you did mention, and it had mental health resources for LGBTQ youth, including crisis and suicide hotlines. Why is this something that you are proud of doing?
Because it doesn't fit Texas values. It doesn't fit our morals. And it doesn't fit the Republican Party. This is
Well,
not something the Republicans stand for. It's not something I stand for. And I don't think it's anything that the governor or the state legislature stands for. And so we're going to close it down.
what advice do you have for transgender Texans who feel targeted by this rhetoric?
Well, it's something that's a personal decision on them and their family to work it out the best they can.
Let's move on here to, excuse me, East Texas. East Texas is a growing region. As you do know, I mean, living in the Metroplex, growing up there, you've seen the growth, and we are growing. According to population estimates from the Census Bureau, Smith County has grown by around 16,000 people since 2020. That's a lot of people. Van Zandt County, 6,000. Henderson, 5. In your view, how will your work as comptroller help support this growth?
Well, I tell you, it's a great thing that they're growing. You don't want to be shrinking. A lot of people complain about growth, of course, because it does lead to a lot of other issues. But it's so important that we have a growing economy, and Texas is growing. East Texas is doing better than it has in a long time, and that's so because people have a job. The businesses can sell things. People be employed. They can make money. And I'm going to use the comptroller's office to assist them any way I can with their budgeting, with their auditing, or anything else they might need help with.
Well, Senator, is there anything else that we should know or anything that we missed on your website that we have not brought up here in this interview today?
Well, I would just say that, Texas is business, and I'm the business candidate to bring the private sector mindset to the position. And I've been endorsed by every conservative organization in the state of Texas, every one, and great patriots, from Ted Cruz, uh, Riley Gaines, a lot of congressmen, a lot of state reps, a lot of senators. And what I want to also have been endorsed by Charlie Kirk before he was murdered. And he said Huffines is the only candidate in Texas that's got the track record and the courage to bring Donald Trump's leadership skills to the state. Now I've been endorsed by Turning Point USA. Yeah, I've been endorsed by really the Texas Republican Party. 75% of the SREC, National Committee man and woman, or former vice chairman of the RNC nationally, and so many more. You can go to the website, which she says is really extensive, and you can see lots and lots of endorsements. I am the Trump candidate in this race. I supported the president in 16, 20, 24 any way I could. I bundled money for him, donated money for him, and I'm just working my tail off for the president. And so just go to my website, donhuffines.com. donhuffines.com. I'm leading in all the polls. I've got a strong, huge lead in all the polls. We're going to win this. I need your help.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on East Texas Now today. It was a pleasure to get to know you and get to know why you are running. This was Senator Don Huffines, who's running for the GOP nomination for Comptroller of Public Accounts. Thank you so much for joining again.